Hello, just waiting to see if the video is actually working. Just give it a second here. Okay. All right. Hey everybody, welcome back to from spring break. Hope you all had a good time. Hope you tried to relax a little bit, the whole thing. Um, you know, we kind of laid off any kind of new assignment making and everything, before you guys left. So but there are things that are due. Of course, the Megalomania rewrite is due on Wednesday. Remember, I gave you a 2-day extension on that one. I like what I saw from the first round. So, again, any kind of like help you need, whatever, just let me know. But again, like it's long past due probably to contact Billboard, and although you still can, okay? I mean, geez. I mean, now we're talking about what, 3, 4 weeks now. So anyway, I mean, we're on now in the second half of the semester where we're going to basically, again, learn more about the reporting end of things, deal more with the reporting end of things. So speaking of now of it being the second half of the semester, that also means, give me one second. That also means, um, sharing the screen here. Um, I'm sorry, just give it a second here. Um, I hope you can hear me. This thing goes really slow. All right. So anyway, it is the second half of the semester. We're now past the halfway point, but it also means that it's now time to give out the major assignment. However, I must say give out, I mean it's time for you actually to give it to yourselves. This is a proposal. Basically, there's no chapter or a lesson or a book on this. This is supposed to serve as so essentially like much like a final exam would, only it's just not an exam. It's actually a story that you're writing. And what you're going to do is you're going to take everything that you've learned this semester, including the stuff you're going to learn over the next few weeks, and try to combine it into like essentially like one story. Everything it's but what it is I say that it basically could entail everything we've talked about so far, and we'll talk about like feature writing, interviewing people, getting enough sources, using data to back up, which is going to be our new lesson, by the way, to back up your information, that sort of thing. You know, Contacting outside people like we did with the Megalomania assignment. So that's like maybe the complicated way of looking at this assignment, but what it is, very simplistically, however, is just really a longer story than what you've done in the past. What you're gonna do is you're gonna write a story that's twice as long as what you've done in the past. Okay. And what I need from you is an assignment idea. That's part of the whole thing here, is to actually have some sort of idea for the assignment itself. Okay. And what I'm asking for this, which is going to be again posted on Monday, the major assignment proposal entry, is just like a 1 or 2 sentences. If you want to go further, that's fine. Basically describing what your idea is. And it can be about anything really. But again, really try to avoid like major investigations of stuff like that. Again, I know we have longer time this time. We have like more than a month, but still, um, I just want, what's the difference between this and a regular story? Well, maybe this would be a story that would require more people to be interviewed. Maybe it's not a story where it's like crime and Rutgers where it's just all black and white. I'm talking about in terms of like, I'm not talking about black and white color. I'm talking about, simplistically like, one side, there's one side that feels one way and one side the other feels the other way. This is maybe something that would maybe a little bit more complicated, maybe like, you know, require maybe additional perspectives, that sort of thing, because it has more shades of gray to it. Okay. So that's the kind of assignment I'm looking for, something that might maybe involve a little bit more reporting to back up the main idea. Okay. The idea here is to reporters be self-managers, for you to think of ideas on your own. It says here in this new assignment entry, your description should state the topic of the story and what you think will, and why you think it'll be interested readers. Here, I know I said 1 or 2 sentences, so there's a lot here, but basically, I'm looking for something that's timely, okay, something that's manageable, no major investigations, please, and really just, even though it's a longer story, to keep it simple, okay. Um, so basically, I mean, when I say so, I mean, you think about the idea of like crime on campus is the story we did and everything, but maybe there's something that's kind of like larger. Maybe there's something like some part of crime on campus. Maybe there's some sort of trend on campus that's happening. Maybe it goes beyond Rutgers University. It doesn't have to be Rutgers story. It could be something that involves something along the lines of the presidential election or something like that. That used to be my final assignment, actually, was to write about write about the election that was happening, later on in the year. And when I first started in 2004, that's what we did. We actually covered the Bush Kerry election, got reaction to it, as the final assignment for the spring semester and the fall semester. So anyway, um, that's when George Bush ran against John Kerry. All right. So anyway, here are two proposals that worked. I have them right here. And again, I'm also trying to keep in mind, like, people live far away from here, so it doesn't have to be something about Rutgers camp on the Rutgers campus. Okay. Um, see, this I feel like might be a more complicated story to do than maybe like crime on campus. How do Rutgers feel about the housing selection process from a student a couple years ago named Morgan? Because that one again is not necessarily a one side versus the other point of view. There's different perspectives on housing. I mean, there's things about like the price of housing. There's things about the condition of housing. There's certain things about like the selection process of housing that go into this story altogether. So that to me requires, instead of maybe interviewing 3 to 5 people, you interview maybe 6 to 10. Okay. Or up to 10 really. um and I want to see how, she says you want to see how Rutgers feels about housing, whether off campus or on campus. Another thing too is off campus versus better than on campus. So there's more questions involved in this type of story that I'm looking for. Okay. um all right, I mean, it's basically just like another story that like we've done before, just something that's longer, and it's something that involves you thinking of the idea yourself. That's what it is at its basic root. Okay. At its basic, most basic level. Okay. And yeah, it could be like just like think of the reaction story, that sort of thing. Okay. It could be just that too, just a little more complicated, I guess you could say. I had a student from China the other couple of years ago talked about, got reaction to people from a plane crash that happened. And again, that's like something that, maybe a little bit more complicated. We had a plane crash that was horrific. It had an impact on the society, but also it led to questions about like plane safety, travel safety. Not only that, but the psychological impact it had on people in China and in this Jiawen's particular area, neighborhood, that sort of thing. Okay. So, and I used to write the comments actually on the thing itself. Now I just send the comments back as an email. So this description or assignment proposal is actually due on Thursday, okay, the end of the day. And what I'll do is I'll actually, hopefully by end of day Friday, I'll have everything back to you in terms of approval or not. I very, very rarely reject an idea, but you know, but I do want to see something that will require a little bit more legwork, what we've seen before. At the same time, something that maybe is a little bit similar to what we've done before, and that is like maybe a reaction to a major event or something that's going on campus, or maybe the presidential election or something like that. And yes, there can be repeats of ideas. You could do the same idea as somebody else in class. That's fine too. Okay. Um, so the proposal is due on Thursday, March 21st. The actual story will be due on Wednesday, April 29th, which is the next to the last day of classes, I guess. Or maybe it's the second to last. I don't know. But anyway, that'll be our last week. So that means my last video will be posted on the April 27th. Okay. It's only like about a month away. So we're getting down to the end now. So anyway, this, like I said, I'm doing this over the weekend, so this will be posted on Monday. Okay. All right. There's really there is some reading that could be related to this assignment, and also the data assignment, the data assignment that I'm actually giving out now, data journalism assignment. I'll talk about that a little bit, but there's really not much. I mean, this lesson I'm going to talk about today is actually going to be much more kind of like a little bit away from the book a little bit, where you're really gonna have to like think on your feet, and it's unfortunate that really the book doesn't really address, even this most recent edition doesn't really address data journalism, because and it's funny because what is data journalism? Data journalism essentially is like essentially what digital journalism has been doing for like almost 30 years now, but it's become like a form of journalism that's become a lot more popular. And again, it's not really addressed so well in the book, but what I'm going to try to do is here to teach you exactly what it is. Okay, it's essentially a form of journalism and news writing where you're really, I mean, I remember when I was talking before, few weeks back, the worksheets, I would tell you about remember, like, think of numbers, think of numbers, think of numbers and everything. Well, that's what we're doing here, is that actually we're basing a story idea on numbers. Okay. And we're not just basing it on a single number, but data's journalism stories are usually stories that are based on a trend in numbers. It's become a much very popular form of journalism over the last 10 years because they find that people like stories that are based on numbers and trending numbers. Okay. And what does that mean? Well, they like stories that deal with things like, okay, how much am I paying in terms of property taxes compared to the next town? How much am I paying in terms of property taxes, over last, since last year? Okay. Um, what am I paying in terms of like how what are my what are the average SAT school rates in my town compared to last year? Have they improved? So it's almost like you're not. It's almost like it's not necessarily a breaking news story, but what you're doing is you're essentially creating a story based on a trend, or you know you're basing a story that basically looks at maybe like a bigger picture of numbers, like property taxes throughout the state. So basically, it's like a collection of numbers, and you're looking at either like you're comparing them to each other, and you're writing a story based on that. And what we're going to do in this assignment is look at a trend of numbers over the last 5 years. And this series of numbers I'm talking about are tuition increases. Okay, the trend of tuition increases over the last 5 years. Okay. Um, all right, so your story is going to be just about that. Now, this has been a very hard assignment for me to teach. So what I have actually done now is actually this is a story you're going to base, actually, where I'm actually going to do much of the writing for you. We're going to base it on a template, okay? That will be contained in this assignment, and also will be a Microsoft Word doc, but I will get to that in a sec, okay? But now that all these sorts of things can be done, Microsoft Excel spreadsheets do things where they can like sort numbers and stuff like that, and they can line up numbers side by side, and they can make, and people have become very fascinated with things like lists, like top five lists. I don't know if you guys ever seen the movie High Fidelity. Okay, it's came out 24 years ago, so it's a long time ago, but there was a big thing about like how this guy John Cusack, his character was big on creating like top five lists, top 10 lists, stuff like that out of music and stuff like that. And this is, so it's not necessarily like an old thing to actually like be interested in like top five lists, top 10 lists, which could be considered like a trending list, right? Um, but but journalism discovered about 10 years ago that people actually like not only like to learn that their tuition is going up, they like to see how it's compared to like previous years, or how it's compared to like other universities or things like that. So there's a big comparison angle that's important to the whole idea of a trending data journalism data story. Okay. So anyway, so the whole top five thing, the whole top, they call them listicles, lists, have become very much very popular in journalism. Now, here's a few examples that I'm talking about. We discovered this in Patch, and every time we would do these stories, they would be very popular. Okay. So when we say like data, it doesn't necessarily have to be like numbers. It actually could be just like things, a list of things. Like we hear about the Internet of Things, as they call it. Um, well, it's the list of things that actually become important. So it's like when we say data, it's actually like not necessarily the um the number that's assigned to the information you're getting, but a list, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's important. Those are important numbers that are a part of this story, a list. Okay. Here we have New Jersey school districts with the most drug alcohol cases, new data 2021. We really got big into this. Now, the thing is, though, is that what you have to do is when you do these stories, I mean, again, like these stories are essentially like trending lists, right? But you still have to do like a written story that's part of it, okay? That provides the context for the story, okay? Um, and the lead essentially is basically about the trend, okay? The lead identifies the trend and provides some sort of overall idea of what you're trying to communicate to people and show people with this list, okay? Whether it's like I said, it's a zero, like it's the top school districts, the trend of property taxes in town, okay? So you have to find something about that trend that sticks out, okay? And this one says a number of New Jersey school districts had sizable increases in substance abuse cases this past year as drugs and alcohol continues to be a pervasive problem. So what is I've talked about idea and angle about this trend is that all these substance abuse cases are increasing. Okay. So that's what the idea is, okay? And then what the rest of the story is before you get into the list is it provides some context. So maybe it gets a little more specific about particular things in that trend of substance abuse cases rising, okay? It may like single out even like certain districts where maybe things have gotten higher than other ones. Like it says, a number of suburban districts, meanwhile, have shown increases. Mahwah, that's a town in Jersey, had among the highest increases in cases between 2019. 20, that's a typo. Wow. I can't go and fix it now. 20, that should be 2018, 2019, and 2019, 2020. Wow, I never discovered that before. Okay, Red Bank and Hassel also had high numbers. See, maybe you can kind of single out things. You can also find reasons for why those things have happened. Okay. Um, and so we have essentially like, I don't know, and there's somebody bringing a doorbell and I'm not going to answer that damn thing. Anyway, so the data was compiled. So basically, what it has is it provides some context. This was taken during the coronavirus crisis, and one of the things that was brought up in this story is that maybe one big reason why you want to find out that you still want to find out the who, what, where, why, when for this trend. And one of the things they brought up is that they actually started counting vaping as like a drugging thing. Okay, so that was one reason why that was happening. Okay, so and then you look at the list here of like what's going up. You see a lot of, it's interesting. Here are the school districts with the highest to lowest number of cases per 1,000 students. I actually did this story myself, so I was actually like thinking that this would be like important to actually, not, I mean, because there's school districts that are very large, are obviously gonna like have a high number of cases, so it was better for me to actually show it per 1,000 students who had the most. And look at this, we have the Monmouth Ocean Educational Services Commission School District, 285 per 1,000. That's a lot, actually. That's like 20, it's like 25% of the school. Then it drops down 89%, 89 per 1,000. And then it goes down, and boy, it's all like a really long list I had actually, man. It's really long. You start to get to like maybe like you get, I think there's like about 1,000. It was about five. You have about 500 school districts, I think it is. So, at the bottom, you got some like Pinelands Regional is actually low. It's actually like showing like a very low rate. That's like a school district down Ocean County, that sort of thing. I'm sorry, actually, I had this wrong. Actually, what did I say here? What did I say here? This is the number of. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, no, I have it right. So, here's the list of school districts with the highest to lowest number of cases. I see and then like at the bottom, I showed the increases and decreases. So that's why you saw negative numbers down there. But this first list shows something like 500 cases, 500 school districts. And then actually, I'm sorry, 300. Okay. And then, the lowest was like Lacey Township with like less than one person per 1,000. So that's pretty good. Of course, this is all reported. So you know, it's actually, the story is actually qualified. You have to put this in the right context, okay? Because sometimes like it's not exactly accurate, you know. Sometimes I get calls from people like on Pylon saying like, "You sure it's right?" Um, New Jersey started its own grading system based on a lot of things, including the old park exam, that sort of thing, which is no longer around. But this also was a list, but again, it shows, and then we have some context here. Context here is that it's a controversial list, and you have the New Jersey School Board Association says it draws an incomplete picture of school performance, but the PTA is saying that parents now have information than before. So the parents are taking the side of like, thank you very much for this, while the New Jersey School Board Association. So there's also like that too. You say who, where, how, why, when. Part of that is the what is this all about? And sometimes what is this all about involves conflict. And we said that could be like part of the story, typically for many stories, or even the theme of the story sometimes is the conflict over it. Okay. So some school districts you see up here got like 100 out of 100. It's almost graded like a you know the old high school tests where you had like a 90 and above was an A, that sort of thing. You know, and actually I had at each individual school here, so it wasn't even the district. So, and it wasn't just Pesh that did this, but they're all doing it now. Okay. NJ.com. These towns have the lowest property taxes in each of the 21 New Jersey's 21 counties. Uh, so basically, they have an overall about the property tax bill going high. So it's a story really about the property taxes going really high, but then they break it down in individual school districts. Folsom I'm sorry, Corbin had the highest average property tax bill in Atlantic County. I don't know if how many of you are from there. Teterboro was highest. It's a very small town in Bergen County, Alpine, former home of Eddie Murphy. I think it was second or third or fourth. Okay. So yeah, so that's what that's so these stories again are based on a trend essentially of numbers, essentially. Whether it's actually the actual like number that represents the story you're talking about, or it's a list of like, I mean, because it also could be things like it's based on this whole idea of lists being important, and I call it the Yelp effect. When Yelp and places like that started up, and basically you could call it data because it's a list, 1 2 3 4 5, one being the highest, the best. But like it started doing things like rating restaurants and stuff like that. So you know, best restaurants in New Brunswick. Let's make sure it's not New Brunswick, Canada. Oh, I don't know if I did that right. I'm sorry. Let me just see what happens here. No, not San Francisco. New Brunswick. um, Let me just see here. Let me just try to go back. That's right. Okay. Jersey. All right. Sponsored results, right. Okay. All right. So I don't know if you guys are going to agree with this, but this is just again ratings. Okay. And you can see there's the data. There's the 4.5. Okay. So there's still data involved based on reviews. Is it scientific? No, but this is what they do. So people go on. This is what we do. Actually, like my wife wanted us to find like a really good restaurant for some event she had for her boss. And we ended up it was funny because we ended up at Old Man Rafferty's where we always go. But anyway, there were other places on this list, and we were like, oh, too fancy, too fancy. So anyway, Salt and Seafood and Oyster Bar. I'm assuming that's in New Brunswick somewhere. I never even heard of some of these places. Flitz Tavern on George. Okay. Trying to run into one. I mean, it's Sophie's Bistro. That was a place we considered. Okay. But these are very, very popular. Okay. Now there's no necessarily no story here, but it basically what it did was inspire journalists to say, like, hey, that's popular. That's work. We can what that works. We can do that too, but we can do even better because we can provide a story on top of that provides context. And we can go to places like here where we get a lot of this information, school Department of Education reports, school performance reports, and actually like do things like compare districts side by side and see how they rate against each other. Okay. And that really matters to people who like, you know, do things. And actually this one actually go county by county, go town by town. You know, I put in my hometown here before 08840. I mean, I can look at individual schools and how they rate against each other. I can actually look at a whole list, the whole thing. So they actually have all this stuff available on the web. Okay. So anyway, back to this assignment. So I have these examples in the story before. So that's what you're doing. You're writing about a trend of numbers, that sort of thing. But I have something more specific in mind for this. Okay. Um, all right. So after I provide some examples of some lesson, basically, what I do is you can see this each story identifies a trend, provides a little detail on that trend, such as what the list means, who is at the top of the list, how the list was developed, where the information came from. It's all who, what, where, how, when, I when, just like every other story, and then reaction to the list. And that's actually the one part where you're gonna deviate from my template. You have to actually get a reaction from people. And actually, I put up a discussion point for that. Okay. So, but we'll get into that. Then, of course, there's a list itself, no fancy graphic, just a list of shows who's pays the most in taxes. That's what I showed you before in each of these. Okay. And as we did with the Megalomania story, we cite reports as essentially our sources. Okay. So, whatever that is, if you can, if you can give me just like 1 second, I'm getting a text from my wife. Just 1 second. That's because I heard a doorbell before. I heard my dog before. And now my wife is answering the text here. But I really wanted to kind of continue going here. So let me share the screen again. Okay. Um, might be a little distracted. I'm sorry about this. I also did a video to try to provide, I said this type of journal has become much more popular in digital age, bringing about the creation and ensuing popular sites like Yelp, Letterboxd. I know we do a big thing. Um, you know, my son and I and my daughter and I do this whole thing where we like read movies. Why not? So if you're curious to know, I think Shawshank Redemption is the best movie ever made, and I put Do the Right Thing #2, but I am thinking about putting Oppenheimer in the top 10. So yeah, all this stuff has become really popular. IMDb.com does it, they all do it. I have a video from David Willis. It's not mandatory viewing or anything like that, but what I do is I have him talk about, the idea, the importance of data and data-oriented information gathering that basically can lead to an assignment. So, I mean, this could be a confusing assignment, okay? Because you're used to doing stories where about breaking news, like profiles, like usually a single thing, but like to actually like I guess feel people feel funny about doing stories about this because it's almost like they feel like they're inventing the story. It's almost like, well, I'm creating a trend, but how is that really a trend? Well, that's a good question. But I do think that actually but they're very popular because I think that the great thing about digital journalism has allowed people to see things in probably a different context. And I think people like to see things like, am I paying more than I was 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, that sort of thing. Whether it's taxes, tuition, whatever, especially with money matters. I think people like to see like how that's going. And I always think of this town, Manchester, New Jersey, which is my dad's actually now being cared for, as I talked to you about. He's got stage 4 cancer, and I've been taking care of him and everything. And I appreciate the well wishes about that. Anyway, but he was living in Manchester, where a lot of adult communities, senior communities are. And whole idea behind that was they actually were building these senior communities because, and I might have told you guys this already, so I'm sorry if I apologize if I'm repeating, but um, because what they do is there's not a big tax burden on the community. When you bring in senior communities, there's no kids, so you don't have to build schools. Schools cost a lot of money. Usually they raise taxes for it. Okay. Um, there's traffic, but it's not the same thing as like building a department store where you have a lot of like speedy traffic. To put on a traffic light, you have like a lot more traffic, that sort of thing. You have like entrances and exits and stuff like that. So it's almost like the perfect development. And they were building these developments in Manchester, and they were telling people that their taxes were going to go down and blah blah blah. But what happened was, like, especially over a period like probably like 5, 10 years during 1980s, taxes were skyrocketing, and that would have been a good time to do like a trend of like when, and maybe they did, of property taxes rising in Manchester over the in the 10 years following all those developments, to show people that what was happening was a scam, and what was happening was a scam. Thanks to that, thanks to the idea of people like discovering that the trend was going upward when it should have gone downward, people realized that there was something bad afoot, and they discovered that this guy George Portesh was the guy who was running the scam. He died allegedly, and they found out that he was taking like millions of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars from the treasury, town treasury, and gambling in Atlantic City. And there were other people involved in the scheme. And after he died, the FBI got involved, and they started people actually. There was actually the Ocean County landfill where they dump all the trash is there. And actually, I'm not kidding you. It's 1990, okay, but they were taking file cabinets, toting them in like trucks, and dumping the files into the landfill. So, and then but all of those people got arrested and jailed anyway. So it was too late for them. But anyway, here's what I want you to do. There's a lot to unpack here, but I want you to guys to find through Google information on Rutgers tuition hikes. Basically, Google and try to find Rutgers tuition hikes. And for the last 5 years, that the ones that have been approved. Okay, so this stretches from now. It's interesting. I laid this out very specifically last year, and most people got it right, but there are a lot of people who just kind of went off track. I don't know why. It's all right here. Okay. First of all, the years, okay? I want you to find out the tuition hike, if there was a tuition hike every year, okay? When I say trend of tuition hikes, there are definitely tuition hikes that have happened between these school years, 2019 to 2020, and 2023 and 2024. However, did it happen every year? Okay. That's kind of a big hint, by the way. I don't know if you guys were here like during a particular year or not. Maybe you weren't, but there was like maybe like there wasn't a tuition hike every year. Let's put it that way. Okay. I guess that's a big hint I can give away. So what's the trend over the last 5 years? How many times your lead should identify how many times the tuition has been raised in the last 5 years? Okay. Going back to 2019, 2020. So that means 2019, 2020. Actually, I have it at the end, actually. 2020 to 2021, 2021 to 2022, 2022 to 2023, and 2023 to this year to 2024. So for some reason, I don't know why people did not read this, or maybe they didn't hear my lecture or whatever. I started seeing like 2015 in here. I was like, what? I mean, guys, please, no, do not do that. Okay. Please don't do that. Don't make me get in my sarcastic mode. Okay. Don't do that. Okay. It's all here. Okay. Please follow the below template. And not only do I have it actually like here, okay, as something that you can actually like start yourself. Look at this. You can actually use this Microsoft Word document to get yourself started. You could write by whoever, okay, whatever your name is. Rutgers University, I have the lead for you. Rutgers University has raised tuition blank times over the last 5 years, causing students to pay thousands more for tuition, blah, blah, blah. So, a little bit of effect, idea, angle, okay? And then what we have here is maybe like some of the reasons that went into why they raised it. So we have Rutgers tuitions, like an overall reason for why they raised tuition over the last 5 years they did. And usually what you have to do is you have to go through like essentially like what I do is I strongly recommend that you find the news releases, okay? Because that is actually the direct voice of the university. You can use news reports too. That's fine too. That's why I say you Google for the information. It's all there on if you Google it. Okay, every year, every tuition or non-tuition hike for the last 5 years you can find in a news report or in a Rutgers press release just by Googling it. Okay. But there's a common reason for why they raise tuition every year, basically. Some reasons were more specific, some years were more specific than others, but there's a common reason for why they raise it. So that's what I'm asking you to do is to go through those 5 years and find those common reasons for why they raised the tuition however many times over the last 5 years, okay? And then maybe insert some sort of quote that comes from a press release or from a news report that explains for why they did it. Okay, there's always some common reason. Rising expenses. Oops, I just gave away a hint, seeing if you're paying attention. Okay. Now, like I said, it's a big hint right here. Okay. They didn't raise it every year. They didn't raise it every year. Okay. What you have to do is you have to find out what year or years they didn't raise it. Rutgers tuition, this is all stuff this could be your story right here. This is like your writing right here, okay? You got that, everybody? And I'm sorry, got a freaking pinwheel. Okay. All right. All right. The university raised tuition, cite the tuition increases and the years. So they cite the years where they did raise it. So this is actually where you're going to report the data right here. You don't have to do like a list, like a traditional list, like up and down, but just put it in this paragraph right here. Okay. So they raise it every year except for that year. Or that year, those years, and then they raise tuition and then cite the years where they did and how much. So like year X, or sorry, I'm sorry, the tuition hike that particular year and 2019, 2020, giving that away because there was a tuition hike that year. Okay. Rutgers did not raise tuition in blah, blah, blah. That same year we're talking about before, citing, there's a big reason why they didn't. Okay. Okay. And that I could say at least 1 year. Okay. Big reason. Okay. The high, and then again, bringing down things in this more specific, provide the context. And boy, this one, you guys, you should know. Okay. Okay. The highest tuition increase in the 5 years was, and by the way, it stuck out. It was high and above all the other 4 years. Okay. Rutgers officials cited, and it's a big reason why they cited it. Oh boy. Just think about like who do they usually blame when they raise tuition? Okay. And what big event happened recently um, that caused them to say that they can raise tuition? Okay, so that's like going to be like probably maybe the first half to whatever, how much of your story, maybe even 2/3, whatever. I don't know. The rest of the story, I want you to include be because this is a story. This is where like things get prioritized. Okay, so the most important information is at the top, and basically that's about the trend of tuition increases. Okay, and why they happen and when they happen, that sort of thing. And the least important information, but still important to the story, is getting student reaction to it. Okay. So what I want you to do is get reaction from students. It doesn't have to be from the discussion point that I just posted over the weekend. It could be just also like, um, it could be just like people, that sort of thing. Just getting a reaction from people about having to like deal with a tuition hike, that sort of thing. Maybe their parents pay for it and the parents complain about it. Or maybe they have mixed opinions about it. Maybe they feel like the tuition hikes are necessary and they have to do it. That's just the way it goes. Okay. So you can do that too. It doesn't have to be all negative. And that's the rest of the story. That's where you're gonna have to fill out the rest of this. Okay. So I hope everybody got that. You have a week to do this. So I'll go over it again, before you turn it in. Okay. It's also not only it's also here too in the assignment points itself. Okay. Now it's always best to get information straight from the horse's mouth. Okay. So what I strongly suggest you do is you actually not go to like the news reports. What I say to you actually is, but if you do go to news reports, you go to respectable news reports. I'm talking about like, and I have them listed here, like NJ.com, the Azure Park Press. These are, big papers in big news outlets in New Jersey, like the Bergen Record, Gannett, New Jersey. Okay, if you have any kind of question, not college tuition compare. I mean, I've had this in this all the time, like, but I still have people who go to this. I don't know why. But anyway, not this. This is not a legitimate news source. Okay. This is just a news source that just copies other news sources. Okay. That's secondhand information. That's hearsay. That would be not allowed in court. Okay. So you can use like NJ.com, that sort of thing. But Rutgers Today is essentially the press release news site. Okay. And you can find the tuition hikes in here. Okay. You don't even have to Google. Okay. You could just go to their search bar right here. Oops, sorry about that. Search Rutgers tuition hike. Let's see what comes up. Okay. Want to be more specific and put in the year. Okay. Look down. Ah, there's 1 year right there. Ooh, I don't want to show you that one. I'm giving something away. A 2.6% tuition hike in 21-22. Okay, that's a past year, so it's not this year. Okay. So that's one of the years. And then you can actually take this is the direct voice. Now, if you actually quote like a news report, you actually have to also quote the news report and the person who's speaking, okay? Because that's actually considered plagiarism if you just take the information from a news report. But if it comes from a press release, that's actually the voice of the university speaking, okay? So workers blah blah blah, blah tuition hike, hey, yeah, okay. Um Tuition increases have been difficult for our students, especially for challenging years after COVID, blah, blah, blah. We're committed to providing an affordable, high quality education. We urge, okay, so, basically that's kind of you could find that typically, their common reason for raising tuition like every year, okay? Now, okay, so like I said, you could just take this information out of here and just repeat it essentially because it is the meant to for direct public consumption. But let's say you wanted to use NJ.com instead, okay? So let's Google that, okay? For that same year. Rutgers tuition hike 20 or maybe some other news source, okay? 2021, 2022, NJ.com. Okay. Google it. All right, yeah, I know. I got that thing going on. Oh, what is that? All right, so this one is here we go. NG.com. Giving away hints, by the way. Rutgers tuition raises 2.9. So let's say you decide to use this as a source instead, okay? Now, this is actually like another news publication, okay? So that's a separate company, it's separate from Rutgers. It's not the Rutgers direct voice. So you can use this information. It's from a respectable news source. It's correct information, that sort of thing. The only thing is going to be different. What's different is going to be is the attribution, okay? In order to like quote them, okay, I say in here how that has to be done, okay? It has to be done this way, okay? Important note about attribution. If it came from a Rutgers press release on Rutgers Today, you can quote the individual directly or the actual press release directly. You just say, according to Rutgers University, okay? Or according to Rutgers University press release, just like the Megalomania press release, okay? And I know I've had people who actually quote the person who wrote the press release too. That's fine too, because they actually have the person usually who wrote the press release. That's fine too, okay? Um, just say according to Rutgers University press release, that's all. But if you're quoting a person or a source from NG.com or some other news source, you have to say, according to that person, I put myself as an example, as quoted by NG.com. That's the big difference, okay? Because you're not doing original reporting there. You're basically like copying information from another news source, okay? That's why it's so much easier and so much easier to read if you just get the press release from the way I showed you, okay, from the university itself, from Rutgers Today. That's their catalog of press releases. That's their library of press releases, okay? All right, so again, this is gonna be due a week from Monday, meaning the day that, that's the day this is posted, basically, okay? So, oops, that's the Godfather. So anyway, I like to do things. What am I saying? All right, so that is that. Now, there is stuff that's, like I said, there is a chapter I asked you guys to read because maybe it's the closest thing that actually like in the book that actually gets to it. It's chapter 18. And actually, it also could help perhaps with the final assignment as well. Because it could, I mean, you could call this investigative reporting, but it's really data journalism reporting. But part of investigative reporting is actually like scooping up data and creating a story out of it. It's basically going beyond the traditional means of reporting, where maybe things are just easily breaking and you report on it. You're reporting, reacting to things that happen. Instead, what you're doing, you're essentially like creating an idea on your own, okay? And you're doing that through the use of data. So, one way you can do that is by using computers, and that's essentially considered investigative reporting, is using computers to get answers. Investigative reporters sometimes analyze thousands of documents or spot trends or find important information. Computer assisted reporting has made the process easier. For example, reporters rely heavily on the internet to gather information to communicate sources and communicate with sources and other reporters. Now, growth of computer assisted reporting is data-driven journalism, or simply data journalism. Data-driven journalism, hungry by the way, uses digital tools and collaborative efforts of news organizations to explore the massive amounts of information available today from a variety of sources. It combines journalism with other fields such as graphic design, blah, blah, yeah, that sort of thing, okay? It's existed for decades, but now it's basically become a lot more important because now there's like the databases that are for it. And now you can see things like they use it, especially for things like the coronavirus, where they showed like maybe like different towns, and we did that over and over again. Maybe the coronavirus was surging as compared to other places. In this case, this is actually comparing it by countries. But when we were in New Jersey, we compared it by towns, and there were some towns that had actually had like clusters. So that's again where like the data really kind of drives the story, where you can see like where the coronavirus is more heavily prevalent compared to other areas. Okay. Um, the statistics are really what drives that essentially. And then at the time, like or New Jersey had actually literally like a database where they actually provided a list of all the towns and everything that had it. So we would just, because that was public information, we would just report the data directly from New Jersey. Okay. All right. So that is essentially like maybe the one area of it's a good chapter to read also for for your final assignment, which will deal with like more, like I said, a more complex idea and more sources to interview, that sort of thing. But at the same time, like, it also can help with this story, basically the idea of actually creating a story by scraping out information. They call it scraping, actually. Scraping information in an investigative way and putting together an idea on your own. Okay. All right, so that's it, guys. So you've got two things there now, or three things, I'm sorry. You have the Megalomania rewrite due on Wednesday. You have the idea for your final assignment. Please submit that by Thursday to that assignment entry, and then of course by Monday is the data assignment, data journalism assignment. All right, everybody, thanks very much, and I will be talking. Let me know if you have any questions. Thanks.